Is it on? Well, this is sort of what, a history of my life, I guess, isn't it? I was born in Carbonado, Washington, a small mining town. It was in a group of many small mining towns where practically everyone worked in them. My dad was a mine worker, and when I was born in Carbonado, we lived there, not even a year before we went down to Wilkeson, because the mine there was a little more prosperous, and they were hiring more people. And I lived in these small towns until I was 9 years old. At that time, we moved to Tacoma. Unfortunately, there were so many mishaps in the mines. We would hear this, occasionally we would hear this big siren, which meant that there had been a disaster in the mine. So we would all run up to the mine with our folks to see what happened and hope that our loved ones were not involved.
I'm helping myself here. I hope that's
But
okay.
many times, we were lucky enough to be spared. But many of our close friends and relatives had family in there who were not so lucky, and they lost their lives. So finally, my father was hurt in the mines, and he couldn't work anymore there. So we lived there for a few years, and then we decided that we had better come to a bigger town where my mother could get work. And in those days, it wasn't fashionable for a woman to work outside the home, but it was a case of necessity in our family. So we moved to Tacoma, and my mother went to work for the railroad, cleaning cars. And we lived not too far from there, and she would put in her day, full day, and then extra time if a special train came in and it had to be cleaned to leave soon again. She would be called to go down, and she always welcomed that because it meant time and a half, and she was supporting the family. In those days, we didn't get help from anyone. You had to earn your own living, and you lived the best way you could. But and my dad stayed home because at that time, they didn't know exactly what was wrong. He was having a lot of problems, and having no doctors, regular doctors in the area. We would occasionally have one that would come for a while. If it was necessary for my dad to go to Seattle to find out just exactly what was wrong, because he couldn't work for 9 years. And at that time, I was 9 years old when we came to Tacoma, and I had to grow up in a hurry because my mother was working, and even though I was going to school, I always felt that she worked so hard that we had to do as much as we could to help out. And I know that I was always a small person, still am, and sometimes I could barely reach the stove, but I would put the water on to boil maybe to make some soup, so that when Mother came home it would be a little easier. But we were a happy family, and we managed well. We had good neighbors. And so then finally, my dad reached a point where my mother said, well, maybe we could go into something, find some kind of work that you can handle, that you can do. And luckily, we had the friendship of the Frank Giusti family. And he, at that time, was running the Tacoma French Bakery. It was the only French bakery in the area. And he gave my dad a job in the bakery. So, and incidentally, it was Mrs. Giusti who found a job for Mother down here, and who brought us in with them to live until we could find a home of our own. So I went to school up in that area for just a few weeks with Evelyn Giusti and my brother Lou. And because...
how many brothers and sisters did you have?
I have only the one brother, Lou. So when we started school there, am I going into too much detail?
No, it's okay. Just...
I have a question about the Giustis. You say they went to, Nam and Pap went to work at the French bakery?
Just my
Pat?
father did.
Just Pat?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because my
And-
mother was, she got a job with Mrs. Giusti's help. Mrs. Giusti knew some people who were working for the railroad and told the circumstances we were in.
Yeah.
So they got mother a job down there
I
working
see.
for the railroad. So then we got our own home. We found a place to rent on down not too far from where the Giustis were, because I can still remember in the evenings when we would go up to visit sometimes, and they'd bring this real good French bread out of the oven, cooked on the bricks. In those days, you know, they would fire up the bricks and cook the bread, and it had a crust about a half-inch thick. We couldn't wait till we got home to eat it. We would break that bread off and eat it all the way home. But anyway, I grew up like you know, with my mother working after I was 9 years old. But it didn't hurt me. I learned, you know, how to be self-sufficient, to kind of do a lot of things to help mother, which I probably wouldn't have done if she had been able to stay home. So it helped me because I used to do the grocery shopping and try to get everything lined up for her to cook at night. So our grocer got to know me, and one day when I was only 14 years old, it was the first time that mother permitted me to take the streetcar to go to town alone. I always had to go with an adult before that. And I was standing there thrilled that this was the day when the grocer, I had to wait for the bus or the streetcar in front of the grocery store. He came out and he said, "Jenny, how would you like a job right now?" And I said, "Oh, really?" I kind of stammered and stuttered, and I thought, "Oh, sure." So there went my first trip to town. I went in the store and started working in the grocery store at 14. But it was a good start for me. And in those days, they needed a lot of help in grocery stores because nothing came packaged. If someone wanted 5 pounds of sugar, I would have to weigh it on the scale and tie it with a string. And rice and all the other things were the same. But it led to me having a job all through high school on weekends and in the summer. So it was a real good experience for me. And then I wanted to become a teacher. I wanted the profession of that profession that was in the back of my mind. And I think it was influenced by so many of our relatives being school teachers and friends. In those days, it seemed that everyone grew up to be a school teacher almost.
Well, those were the days when women, I think, they say the only really professional occupations for women were school teacher and nurse.
That's right.
That was it, school
Yeah.
teacher and nurse. And if you wanted something a little lower, telephone operator.
Yeah. So anyway, because the family couldn't afford the fee, the college fee, I decided, well, I'll go to business college. Because as I was working, even that young, on weekends, I was earning enough to buy my own clothes and to pay for my education at a business college. So then I switched into the business profession, which I always liked.
Yeah.
And
Well,
but-
secretaries were in demand. I forgot to mention that. That was
Yeah,
another good
secretaries.
profession.
And then because we had a good friend who was helping run a beauty school. There weren't many in those days, and they were more popular than these days, really, because there were so few of them that many of them went to one place, and they were doing. In those days, it was marcelling, finger waving, things that we don't do now. So this friend, a good friend, was running the shop for the owner, and she asked me one day if I wanted to come in and do the bookkeeping for them. Well, I was not interested really in a beautician's job at all, but I thought, well, it's another job. So I took it, and I was cashiering and doing the bookkeeping. And while I was doing that, I had time to learn the profession, the beauty profession. So I did that, and I got my license and everything, but I knew I would never follow it because it didn't appeal to me that much. But I enjoyed working there, and then, see, this was a school, so there were a lot of students, and they had textbooks too. They had to learn different things to get their to take the state exam to pass and get their license. So I was in charge. I was teaching the textbook classes, and it was rather interesting, but it was not my thing. I knew that from the start, but it was something else for me to do to earn a little money. And so my mother was very unhappy because many times I would have to work late in the day because people who couldn't come in during the day, we'd have to make appointments for at their convenience. But then after that, I finally gave that up. And I thought, no, and it was hard to get work in those days. It was really
The
tough.
Depression, right?
Yeah, it was hard.
Yeah.
But my Leanne Botcher then, she finally married my brother later, but she was working for the Goodrich Tire Company, and occasionally when they'd have a promotion of
We should explain that's Uncle Lou's first wife, not Thelma. Lee Botcher Uncle Lou was married before Thelma one
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
well, but anyway, she wasn't his wife then.
She was just
going with him.
going with him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's why I
okay.
didn't mention it, because
Oh,
she was not his wife.
okay.
But anyway, she, whenever they had a promotion and sent out extra flyers and things, they needed a typist. So, I didn't mention there that I went to business college. Did I?
Oh yeah, you did. You
I
did
did.
mention,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
because
I
you
did.
said that the beauty school
Yeah.
kind of helped finance your way.
That's
So
right.
when did you lose your job at the grocery store? I mean, or were
Well,
you still
I finally
doing that?
left it because that wasn't
That
the thing
wasn't
I wanted
high
either.
pay. That wasn't.
I kept that for years though, because in the summer months I would work the full every
Yeah.
day, not only on weekends, because
Yeah.
I would replace the other people.
On vacation.
Yeah, and we had two men who were only delivered, because we used to deliver to the Cushman Hospital and to Puyallup. People used to buy and then, or call up, and so much was delivered. So then one of the other fellows would take the place of one of the delivery men, and I would take his place in the store.
I don't think they deliver anymore at grocery stores, do they?
Well, they do now. There's a charge. They've started in again.
They've started because a
for
lot of
seniors.
people are shut-ins. I guess they
Right.
had to. Yeah.
But anyway, those were all jobs that really helped me out
Sure.
and really helped me in life. I learned so many things that I wouldn't have otherwise.
So now the job you got with Lee Botcher, was that with
Well, that
Botcher's
was-
company or?
That was the Goodrich Company.
Oh, Goodrich.
Tire. What else? Tire and something else. It was more than tires, but it was
And her brother was working there?
no. She had a job there.
Oh, she had a job.
So she said to me, "Would you like to come in and work occasionally when we need extra help?" So that's where I really got started in the field of business. I would go in there and type and do things, and little by little I learned the job there. And then from there, of course, I was always looking for a steady job. And when I heard that Sears ran a want ad in the paper that they were doing some hiring because they were a little store down on 24th and Pacific, and they were going to move downtown Tacoma, and what we thought was going to be a big store, and it was in those days. So they were doing some hiring. So I went in to apply, and I looked around when I was sitting there applying for this job, and there were about 10 other people there, and I thought, I'll never make it, because they've had a lot of experience, and I haven't in this field. But surely enough, I was called, I got the job. So then I started in the store down here in Tacoma, and I started out in the credit department. Then I became credit authorizer, where I approved, about 80% of all the credit that went through. And then after a number of years there, I was approached by the manager who said he would like me to become personnel manager, because the one who was there was going to be leaving because her husband was in the service, and she was going to go cross country to the East Coast. And so I went up there, and I was supposed to learn what every department in the store, the needs of all the departments, so that I would be doing all the hiring for them. And I ended up as personnel manager for Sears, which I really enjoyed. I thought it was a job that really suited me.
Did you put your typing skills to work at Sears that you learned in business college?
I did in the beginning. In the credit department, I didn't have to, because I was in charge of the department, and I would the accounts were brought to me to be approved. So I never did a lot of typing, and I never got to be an excellent typist. But in personnel, they told me I would have a secretary because I wouldn't have time. I'd be talking to people most of the time. I wouldn't be able to do a lot of typing. And every time the manager saw me at the typewriter, once in a while I'd get there because sometimes you can think better at the typewriter when you want to write something. He'd say, well, you're not supposed to do that. Hire someone else if you need it. He was real nice that way. So eventually I ended up with 2 people in the credit department to help me. And that made my job easier because they wanted me to spend more time on the floor to see what was going on, if everyone was doing their job and things like that. So then I was there 9 years, and Al had been with the store for years too, but he didn't work anywhere near where I worked. He was in you were up in
First in shipping,
first in shipping, and then in
and then in
the marking room.
the marking room, I became the shipping and receiving clerk.
And then it was funny because I knew Al just to say hello, but maybe I'd see him twice a year, in the store because we didn't work. Our jobs were not one was not involved with the other. We didn't have to get together for any reason. But then in those days, it was fashionable for a store to pick 2 popular people and make them manager and assistant manager for the day. And they were elected by the other people in the store. Well, that one year when Sears decided to do that, Al and I were voted as the 2 most, I don't know if you'd say popular in the store, but the 2 that they wanted to represent them for the day. So Al and I were together all that day, and we got to know each other because we were sitting up there in the office. It was just a thing that the stores did for kind of publicity, But I know Al and I went out to lunch together and we spent the day and that. And after that, every year at Christmas when Al would get in those days corsages were popular. When Al would get a corsage for every girl who worked in his department, one would come down to me in the credit office. And I used to say,
cute.
well, I wonder why he keeps sending me this corsage. And we weren't interested romantically, then.
Maybe he was, and he was trying to impress
He
you.
said he was working his way into my. Anyway, I thought, and everybody else in the department said, "Gee, how do you rate? You get one from that department from Al Rapp. You're the only one." So anyway, then Al went into this. We lost. Then when I became personnel manager, a lot of the fellows were going into the service. Some voluntarily, and others were being called. And Al volunteered. He went in the service. So then my office became the most popular spot in the store because the boys would all write into personnel and say, "Gee, what's going on in the store? We're here overseas, and we would like to know." They wanted letters, information from the store because they were going to come back someday to work there.
Now, were you and Daddy going together
No,
when he
no,
went to
I'm
the
coming to
service?
that,
Oh,
no.
oh.
So Al signed up, didn't you, to go in the service?
Yeah.
He didn't wait to be called. He signed up and went in. So my office was getting flooded with all these letters from these boys that I knew that were temporarily in the service, and I was doing a lot of hiring of extra people to replace them. So one day I thought, we better put out a newsletter. I can't answer all these letters. Take too many people. So I approached a couple men in the store that I thought maybe would help me. And one especially, remember Ken Poole?
Yeah.
I said, "Ken, would you take over this project?" I said, "Those boys want to know what's going on." I said, "We should put out a newsletter once a month, telling them what's going on and that we miss them and looking forward to the day they're coming back." And he said, "Oh, sure, Jenny." And I was happy. He took that off my hands. And that got to be kind of popular with the boys.
Oh, that's neat.
And so every once in a while, my office looked directly down the hall to the elevators. And once in a while, I'd see a boy in uniform get out of the elevator and start waving and come into my office, and say, "Here we are.
Uh-huh.
Oh, we're so glad to be home." And they said, then they would start telling me everything that was going on. And so one day, one of the boys who came back was Al. They all headed for personnel, and of course that was my office. So Al came in up to my office. He was in his sailor's uniform, but he wasn't out of the service yet. He was stationed at where was-
Shelton.
at Shelton, and he was the weatherman. He was the what's the term?
Aerographer.
Yeah, for the Navy. So he was flying up in these balloons, because in those days, that's how you predicted the weather.
Oh,
You had
sure.
to get up there and look around, I guess,
Yeah.
with machines, but not like what they have now. So he came into the office, and I was glad to see him. And he says, I'm going to be stationed in Shelton, and we had a nice little chat, and that's all. Well, a couple days later, when I was sitting at home with Lee Bellator, that she had married Lou in the meantime. And then when Lou went overseas, she lived with us for a while. And the phone rang, and it was Al, and he asked me if I'd go out on a date with him. And I paused just a minute. I thought, gee, this is kind of strange. And then I said, well, yes. And at that time, Al owned a place at Sunset Beach, up at the other end from where we later settled. And he said he was having a little party, a group of friends, and he would like me to come as his date if I would. And I said, well, yes, I will. So that was the start. We found out that we were very compatible. We enjoyed each other's company so much. And I thought, gee, he really is a nice fellow. And then
That was smart of him to take you on to the beach as a first date. I think that was good, Daddy, because that would be impressive. Sunset Beach was everybody's favorite spot. You were thinking.
And so anyway, I met a lot of his friends. And we had a good time. So after that, we were a couple. I mean, but we didn't let it be known at the store. I didn't want it known yet at the store. We kind of kept it quiet, because...
Well, did they have kind of a policy that they didn't want people fraternizing? Was that
No.
because
No,
that's
they
the way
didn't.
in a lot of workplaces?
No, they didn't. But then, everyone, anytime I did anything, everybody knew about it. Because I was on checklist. I was one of the,
Yeah.
there was the boss and the buyers, and me, and so they all kind of would watch what we did and then talk about it. So anyway, we went together for quite a while, and then when we decided to get married, I told Al not before Christmas, because in those days it was different than now. You would build up your
Payroll.
payroll. You just about half again what you had, because you'd get in all this Christmas merchandise and toys. We didn't have toy stores and all that. They would come to the department stores. And then we'd open up a big toy area. So I was really busy then. And then after Christmas, I was busy letting all these people go.
Yeah.
So that was the only sad time when I worked at the store when I had to fire these people. I told most of them, though, that they were being hired for Christmas. And then we'd always add, of course, if an opening comes up in another area of the store or in this department, we'll call you. But that was the way, and they all accepted it. They knew it, except one woman. I'll never forget it. She got so upset. She thought she was hired for good, and she cried and everything. And I felt terrible, because I thought, well, what can I do?
Yeah.
But it always kind of spoiled my Christmas a little, because I had to make so many people unhappy. But then, of course, Al had proposed, and I accepted, but I said, you're going to have to wait till after Christmas. I will not do this to the store, leave them in the lurch
Yeah.
when they really need me to get the payroll back where it should be. So Daddy understood, so he said, well, let's get married on New Year's Day. I said, you're kidding. I said, you want everyone to bring their hangover to our wedding? And he said, well, I'll always have the day off. We'll always be together.
Yeah.
New Year's Day is always off. And I said, well, now, I was a Catholic, but kind of a lukewarm one, because we didn't have a Catholic church when I was growing up in the country,
Yeah.
But Daddy was a devoted Catholic, and we wanted to get married in the church, and I said, that's a holy day of obligation. It was then. I
Yeah,
said,
I
"No
was going to
one-"
ask you that. I
I
don't
said,
think that's
no one's going to
permitted.
marry us on Christmas, on New Year's Day. And Daddy says, we'll see. So, of course, we went to St. Leo's first, and oh, it was a no-no. Oh, no, no way, you know. So Daddy said, let's go up to St. Rita's, that little church where all the Italians were going.
Oh, yeah.
I knew
And,
Father
and he knew
Yeah.
Father Biagini. You had him when you were going to school,
Yeah,
did
he
you?
was our football coach.
And so when we went in to see him, I thought we'd get a negative answer again. But he said, "Oh, I remember you, Al. Yeah, you played football." And, you know, he was kind of happy that we were getting together and all. And he says, Al said, "Do you think we can get married on New Year's Day?" And he says, "Oh, I think I can get a dispensation from the Archbishop." And I thought they never give. I don't know of anyone else who ever got one. I don't know whether he ever wrote to the Archbishop or if he just gave us the dispensation. But anyway, he arranged it for us to be married on New Year's Day. And all our Catholic friends were saying, "How can you do that? You can't get married on New Year's Day." And they were all so surprised, but we made it.
Yeah, well, that's
And
neat.
we got married on New Year's Day, and then Al
Maybe-
didn't want me to work anymore,
Yeah.
so I quit.
Maybe we should, at this point,
St.
Oh,
Joseph's.
wait.
Start now.
I was born in St. Joseph's Hospital, and for a long while, my mother set a record for the heaviest child born there. And I don't remember exactly what it was, but I think it was around 13 pounds.
Oh, poor Nun.
Well, she barely survived,
Oh, wow.
and my dad was working at a grocery store at the time, and shortly after I was born, he was offered a job on the railroad. They needed a crew of men to put a spur in, and my dad had worked on the railroad in Chicago as a boy, so he thought he'd tackle it, and he rounded up a crew of all Italian men and Irish. There was a couple Irish men that were available, and I'm trying to keep a sequence here, and I'm having a hard
Well,
time doing it.
Oh, that's all right.
when you worked on the railroad, where were you living? You were sent up to the country, weren't you?
Yeah, we were sent up to a logging camp, McCormick, Washington. It's at that time a little town just a few miles from Centralia. And
How old were you at the time?
at the time, I think I was about 4 years old.
Oh, so you were little.
Little, and my dad had a good paying job. I'm trying to put everything in focus, but I can't do it.
Oh, that's okay.
Well,
So how long did he work for the railroad?
Well, he worked for the railroad. I'd say about 4 years.
About 4 years?
Yes.
Yeah.
About 4 years, and he wound up being a section foreman, and he'd always wanted to come back to Tacoma, so
Was he offered a job in Tacoma? Is that why he quit the railroad?
yes, he was offered a job in Tacoma in a grocery store. It was
Well, you
Oh, it's okay.
that-
You don't have to remember the name of the grocery store.
But the fact, you were 7 years old when you came here, were you not? You had to start school a year late.
Yes. I was 7 years old when we came back to town here, and I started school at St. Leo's, and At that time, my my English wasn't as polished as it might have been, because I've been exposed. My dad's people, the people that he hired, they were all Italians. They all spoke Italian around the house,
Yeah.
and so the first few days at school were a little difficult. But
Sure.
I caught on in a hurry. I started St. Leo's, and I went through St. Leo's.
How did you get along with your two sisters now? You grew up in a family of two sisters, Aunt Nell and Aunt Jen. You guys all got along pretty good though,
We
didn't you?
got along. We got along very well.
Good.
Yes.
One was 2 years older and one was 2 years younger, so he was the middle one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when we came to town, my dad. My dad.
See, he was working in the grocery store when you came to
Yeah.
town? Yeah.
That's it.
Then he went
Yeah,
into
we
a
started.
restaurant,
We
didn't
started for Marconi Grocery, and then after Marconi, no, he started with Pagni and Lenti.
So he
Well,
worked in
then
two
he-
grocery stores.
There were two grocery stores.
Yeah,
How-
and then go on, he was on to, then he went into the restaurant business.
Then he went into the restaurant.
How long
business.
did he work at the grocery stores before he went into the restaurant business? And how did he happen to get into the restaurant business?
Well,
It was easy in those days, you just made up your mind and you opened it.
no, it wasn't quite that easy. He started out in the kitchen. My dad was a pretty good cook,
Oh, great.
Italian cooking.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
there was a big Italian colony in Tacoma. They had three Italian restaurants at the time in Tacoma. So he,
Was he offered a job by a friend? How did he move out of the grocery store into the restaurant business?
I was so young then, I don't think he paid
no,
much
no,
attention.
Maybe you were too young to know.
No.
I just wondered if he had a friend that offered him the job or something.
You wanted to know if I,
How he moved out of the grocery store business and got into the restaurant business. If he knew a friend at a restaurant that offered him a job, was
He
that
knew
the
a
deal?
lot of- Everybody knew each other in those
everybody
days.
knew each other, all the
I see.
He
Italians.
knew everybody.
And
He ended up there anyway.
through a friend,
Yeah.
it was Lenzi, Mr. Lenzi, that he had known in Chicago.
Uh-huh.
And
So about how old were you when he started in the restaurant business?
oh, I'd say
You were in school?
6, 7 years old.
So he wasn't working in the grocery stores all that long. After he moved back to Tacoma, that was just kind of to tide him over till he got into the restaurant business, right?
Right?
Yeah.
Well, you were older. When you came here, you were 7, so
Yeah.
you had to be about 8 or 9.
8 or 9.
How old were you when your dad died?
I was 11 years old, and
How did he die?
an automobile accident. And it
Did it happen at night or during the day?
no, it happened at night. My dad was taking. He had the restaurant. He was taking someone home, and there was on the flats at that time. There was. I'm groping for a word.
I think it was a bridge, wasn't it?
What is an elevated? It's an elevated road. What do you call an elevated road?
Overpass?
Huh?
Overpass?
It was an overpass, but it about a half a mile, and at the end it had an abrupt 90-degree curve,
Oh.
real sharp curve.
Oh.
And when he it was winter time, and the bridge was wood, so it was frosty,
Oh.
and I don't know how fast he was going, but
Oh.
it was a 90-degree turn, and he went right off the end of it,
Oh.
and it killed him naturally. So then
He had already taken this other person home, so he was in the car by himself.
he was in the car by himself.
Yeah.
So it was, that was, I was trying to think how old he was.
Oh, well, honey, it doesn't matter. It was just a few years after you were here.
Yeah,
Tell them how you had to take over the responsibility of the family almost.
well, of course, yeah, things, my mother had a little savings that they had accumulated, but all of a sudden, we had no income,
Yeah.
so about that time, I was about 12 years old, I think,
Yeah.
and I got the paper route.
Did Aunt Nell get a job too?
No,
No,
there were no jobs for women in those days.
no,
Well, I thought because you got a job at the grocery store when you were 14, I thought
That's
maybe
very unusual.
no.
I thought maybe
Because
she.
see, the grocer knew me.
Oh,
I had been
oh.
shopping since I was 9 there for my mother. And
Yeah.
my mother was
Okay.
working.
Well, that's okay, Daddy. Go on. I just did.
Well,
You said you got a job at the paper.
You got a paper route.
yeah, I got a paper route, and I shortly afterwards, I had a chance to get another paper route, so I wound up with the biggest paper route in Tacoma.
Yeah.
Actually, you had 3 paper routes.
I had 3 paper routes
Yeah.
that all continuity
Yeah.
wise,
Sure.
they were all in a line, so I could handle it. And that worked out real good. I was
Yeah.
big for my age, just like Matthew is.
Yeah.
So I started.
So you were earning money for the family.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And I was earning far more than people that working in the mills.
Wow. So that worked out pretty good.
That worked out pretty good.
But it was hard.
Oh yeah, I imagine.
Because they didn't have a car. He had to pick up his papers.
Yeah.
But at any rate,
Did you have a bicycle? Did that help?
yeah, I had a bicycle later on at one
Yeah.
time.
But not in the beginning.
Yeah. Where was I though? I lost my sequence.
Well, you had
Oh.
3 paper routes.
Yeah, you were
Yeah.
saying you had 3
Okay,
paper
yeah.
routes.
That I joined the Boy Scouts when I was about 11 years old, and now they had it would be a Cub Scout, I guess.
No, that would be Boy Scouts. Cub Scouts, I think, are until you're
They have
8 or
they
10.
have Boy Scouts.
Yeah, I think when you're 10, you become a Boy Scout. Cub Scouts is younger than 10.
Yeah, and I enjoyed the Scouts very much, but it were kind of a hardship when by having the paper
Oh, I'll bet.
routes, because I'd have do my collecting in the evening, and it took a lot of my time. I liked the scouting program, and we'd go on long hikes. At one time, they had marathons that the Boy Scout office, I mean the Scouts were were programming, and I won. There were 25-mile hikes,
Can you imagine?
Whoa,
I can
that's a
carry
lot.
my
and we hiked from the city hall, which was down there on 7th and Pacific, to the town of Yelm.
Wow.
Oh,
Oh man.
Oh,
Downtown
yeah.
Tacoma to Yelm?
25 miles.
You guys must have been in good
Wow.
shape.
25, that's closer to 30 from here, and you were.
Yeah, it's almost like walking from here to Seattle. I mean, yeah.
Yeah,
You,
it was a pretty
you
good
did
ride.
that all in one day?
All in one day.
Did you?
Well,
How
sure.
long did it take you to do the?
Well, it took, as I remember, it took me just under 5 hours.
Whoa.
He was a walker. That's why he's been such a walker all his life.
And then I remember when we had the marathons, the scouting marathons, I was a cinch because I had all these paper routes.
That kept you in shape.
You bet I was. So I entered for 3 years, and I won it hands down all 3 years.
So what
That's for all the Boy Scouts
In the
in
city.
Tacoma.
yeah. So like who got there first? Was that what made you won? It was kind of like a run-a-thon, like they have Sound and Narrows. Whoever got to Yelm first, you got there first. Was
Yeah,
that the deal? Yeah.
well, it's from here to there, from the city hall
Yeah.
to Yelm.
Oh,
Who
that's
got
pretty
there
cool.
first?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's neat. That's pretty cool. Now, when did you meet Russ Schmidt and get that job in the theater?
Well,
He was in high school then.
yeah, that was later on. That I was in high school. My
Was
mo-
that your next job after the paper route was working in the theater? That was your next job?
Right.
Yeah.
And I was working in the theaters when I was working on the paper route. See, I had 3 routes,
Yeah.
so I was making more money than the fellows in the sawmills were. Men in
Yeah.
the sawmills.
Yeah,
were
that's
making.
what you were saying. Yeah.
But I had gotten acquainted.
Did you know some?
No. My mother wanted me to get a job that wasn't as hard.
Yeah.
Remember, he had to walk in the rain day after day after day
Oh,
for
yeah.
hours and hours delivering that paper.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, so I put applications in all the theaters in
Uh-huh.
town, and I was called shortly after.
Oh, good.
I want to inject one thing here. I remember when you were working at the theaters, you didn't know me, and I thought you were the handsomest man in Tacoma. And I wasn't the only one. I heard later from Ella Maddock that she said there were more girls who were interested in Al. They thought he was, and he was handsome. I remember when
He looked
took
cute
me-
in his uniform. I said we see that picture downstairs.
Yeah, I used to he'd take my ticket, and I think, boy, that's before the Sears days, you know.
Yeah.
And so he worked at the theater with Russ, huh?
Yeah.
Is that how you met Russ, or were you guys going to school together anyway?
No, that's where I met Russ.
Oh, that's neat. And you guys became good friends because you worked together.
Yeah, we worked together for several years.
Yeah, that's neat. So now, did you and Mud go to the same high school? Did you see each other at school?
No.
No.
Well, no, nobody saw Al at school because he would leave. He would take all his subjects in the morning, so that he could leave at noon to pick up his papers real early because he had so many
Oh,
routes.
That's right.
He
Oh,
couldn't
wow.
wait like the other kids to get their papers.
Yeah.
You had to be down there when at 1 o'clock,
At 2 o'clock.
at 2 o'clock,
Yeah.
and he would get all these papers
Yeah.
because if he waited until he could get
Yeah.
them when the others got them, he wouldn't have time to do all that delivering.
At that
Yeah.
time, the Tacoma paper was an evening paper, right?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Gee.
it was an evening paper.
And then they didn't send bills out either. He had to go collect when
Yeah.
it was time to collect the
Every home
money.
to collect.
Door to door.
How long did you work at the movie theater?
In the theaters? Oh, I'd say all through high school.
Yeah.
But
Now, how was the pay at the theaters in comparison to the 3 paper routes? Was it about the same or less or more or
Well, about the same.
about the same?
Yeah.
Yeah, well that's good that you didn't have to come down.
No.
Yeah, that's neat.
But in those days, they had usherettes. When you went in, they with their flashlights, they'd take you down to the seat.
Oh yeah.
And they always had well, when you first went in, you told them that you were an electrician, didn't you? That's when
Yeah.
you got hired. He was not an
Oh.
electrician, so he studied it up, because he had.
Well, I studied electricity in Lincoln.
Oh, at school.
I had at school.
Yeah.
I had basic electricity.
That was like shop, right?
Shop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you had to take care of. There were a lot of electrical things to remember in a.
So that was your first job. I thought your first job was usher, but your first job was an electrician.
Actually, my first job was ushering.
Oh, was ushering.
Yeah. Then I got acquainted with the maintenance man,
Oh.
the theater maintenance
Yeah.
man, and then when he went on to another job, I took over.
Oh, cool.
So I worked as a maintenance man in Rialto and in the Roxy
Wow.
and in
Yeah. And they were still in the same location as they are now, downtown Tacoma.
right.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Pantages.
The Pantages is now where Roxy used to be, yeah. The Rialto's still there.
And those were the days of vaudeville, when
Oh, yeah.
Hope would come around.
Oh
and
yeah, we
Had the
saw-
big
Crosby,
names.
all
Oh,
the big
yeah.
names.
Oh, I was the envy of every boy in town.
And you got to meet a lot of these famous people?
I'd say hello to them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's good enough.
That's about all.
Yeah, yeah. That's,
Well, what job did you get after the movie theater? What happened after?
Well, what happened?
You went to college, didn't you?
Oh, I see. There's something I forgot altogether.
well, no, you're in sequence. You're okay because we got as far as the movie theater. That's what your high school
You were
days.
in high school.
You were in
yeah.
high school, and then so you didn't forget. We're just coming to that. So then after high school, then you went to WSU, right?
I went to Washington State,
Yeah.
and I put in 2 years there.
I thought you said you put in 3.5.
No. But a little over 2, though. It was more like 3, wasn't it?
No, 2.
I thought it was 3.
forgot.
You know what? What I
I
remember.
remember
What
that it
did
was
what did
3.
you major in? Or
Uh,
what did you study?
mechanical engineering.
A lot of math courses. He took a lot of hard courses
Yeah.
over there.
But you
Yeah.
know, even with all this work, I don't know how he did his studying, because he'd go to school till noon, then he'd rush down to get his papers, then he'd take the. He worked hard every day of his life after he was 11 years old,
Yeah.
and he got good grades. He
Yeah.
was an excellent student but
Yeah.
he didn't have much time to study. You didn't get much sleep in those days.
No, I didn't.
Gee, poor daddy. Well, now when you were in college, did you have a job also at the college, or could you concentrate on your studying once you got to college?
No, when I got to college, no, I didn't have a job.
Yeah. Well, that's probably just as well.
What job did you get after you got out of college?
Sears Roebuck.
I went to Sears. Of course, I couldn't finish college because in the meantime, times got a little tough, and
There was no money.
I had to go to work. And so
So from there you went to Sears.
from there I went to Sears, and I started out in the shipping department.
Would that be like working in the warehouse?
Yeah.
Kind of like what Cliff did before he retired?
That's right.
Yeah.
Actually, I started working. I was working in the warehouse part-time on the loading dock, on the shipping
Yeah.
end of it.
So how did you get a job at Sears? Now you're fresh out of college, you got home. Was it advertised in the paper, or did you know somebody that said, hey, there's a job opening, or?
No, No, I didn't know anyone. I just applied,
Yeah,
Oh,
in those
just
days,
apply.
we just went in to apply.
Yeah.
and shortly after, I got on part-time
Oh, good.
in the hardware department. And after after a few months in the hardware department, I went up into appliances.
Mm-hmm.
And after the war came along, all the fellas in, of course there were several of us, we went down and enlisted. I enlisted
Right.
in the Navy.
Yeah.
Where were you first stationed when you?
My first station,
Yeah.
well, at that time, everybody's that listed in the Navy went down to San Diego to the basic
Basic training.
course. And then they did, we just, when you finished boot camp, then they send you to the station. They assign me to a ship, the Chester.
Right.
And
You carried who, the commander? That was the ship that carried the
yeah, the
The
ship,
big-
the
big-
flagship, yeah.
they called it the flagship.
Because we carried the commander of an attack squadron.
Mm-hmm.
So we
And
moved around.
you were the weatherman aboard the ship, right?
Right. I was the weatherman
Meteorologist.
aboard the ship.
Where did you go after basic? What was your first assignment?
After basic,
Yeah.
Well, he was all over.
after basic, I was assigned to the ship.
Yeah, but where did the ship go?
Oh, the ship went out on the fleet. We operated in the Pacific Fleet. So the ship, while I was on her, we were, of course, there were war years.
Mm-hmm.
It was during the war. So we went, operated in the South Pacific.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in the South Pacific for, I would say, 3 years.
Was it beautiful? I mean, you know, after seeing the movie South Pacific, I just kind of marveled at it. I mean, did you guys get a chance? I know you were at war, but did you get a chance to appreciate the beauty and the culture and go swimming at all in that nice warm water? And did you get to
Not much.
appreciate any of that, or? I know you were busy, but
It wasn't like the movie.
No, it's not like the movie South
Were
Pacific.
you ever in any battles?
Oh boy,
Oh
yes.
boy, we had a few of those.
were you in
There's
Midway?
one- There's one he can't even talk about now. He
Where-
saw a whole ship go down.
Oh, that must
All
have been
his
hard.
friends, all
Oh.
go down.
Were you at Midway? Were you at during that battle?
No,
You weren't at Midway.
I wasn't at Midway. I got on right after Midway. And we operated it right off
You were at, let's see, South Pacific. So were you like Solomon Islands around there, or
the Solomon Islands.
were you near New Guinea, Australia?
New Guinea.
Australia around there, and New Zealand. I meant to say New Zealand, Australia.
Well, we operated in that area, but
Yeah.
there was no action in New Zealand
No.
particularly. But in Australia, off the coast of Australia, we saw a lot of action.
Yeah.
And of course, most of the action was on shipboard.
Yeah.
That when
Sure.
we were
They were attacked.
in these battles off of, I've forgotten.
We were around Tahiti and Bora Bora and those places.
Bora Bora was was one place,
Yeah.
Were you at Guadalcanal?
huh?
Guadalcanal, were you there?
Guadalcanal,
Yeah.
Guadalcanal.
Was your ship ever hit in any of the battles?
Yes, yes, we were hit twice. And of course, we'd come in to San Francisco the first time. They had a shipyard there, and while the ship was being repaired, they would assign me to the nearest weather station, naval weather station.
Yeah.
That's how I got into forecasting weather.
Uh-huh.
And
when you were ready to come home, you had a chance, we had a weatherman in Tacoma in those days, and you could have had the job.
I could have had the job at that time. Yeah.
So you actually, where did you learn how to be a weatherman? Was
On the
that
ship.
on the ship or?
No, they sent me to school.
Oh, neat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was, the Navy operated a weather school.
Now, is this what?
Forecasting.
Yeah. Did you tell them you wanted to do this, or did they tell you you will be a weatherman? How did that work?
No, I was assigned.
You were assigned.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Because of my, I don't even remember why I was assigned. There was a reason. They thought that,
Maybe because you had been to college and
there you got it.
yeah.
Yeah.
May I add something here?
Sure.
When Daddy and I decided that we were going to be married, but we hadn't told anyone yet, and we wouldn't, this was when, in October about,
Yeah.
and I said I would not do it before Christmas because it would
Yeah.
be not a nice thing to do to the store.
Yeah. You.
But anyway, Daddy was assigned here at
Shelton.
Shelton, so in order to see me, he was on full duty there.
Yeah.
He would have to work 2 shifts, so he would get one off. He'd have no sleep. He'd work day
Oh,
and night.
poor Daddy.
And then so that
Oh.
he could come over here and see me. And then when he'd go back, he would take that time here, and then he'd go
Yeah.
back and work a double shift again.
Oh.
I don't know
Man.
how he did it, because
Gee.
he never got it.
It was worth every.
Oh wow.
Well,
That was-
hardship to see the PBS Tacoma.
So actually, your relationship kind of started after you got back from the Navy. So you didn't you
Yeah.
guys didn't write letters back and forth
No.
with you in the Navy or
No,
anything.
he just got what everybody in the store
Yeah.
got,
Yeah.
So, what were the battles you were in? What were they like?
Did they all have names like the Battle of such and such and the Battle of such and such? And which ones were you in? Or can you remember?
Where was the one? I don't like to bring this up because I know maybe I shouldn't. You get too emotional. The ship that went down that you watched. You want to forget it?
Yeah, that was the South Pacific.
That was in the South Pacific.
The whole ship.
Well, you were the whole time in the South Pacific, weren't
Yes. Yes, I spent the whole time in
But he gets very emotional with that, so we won't discuss it.
you? Yeah. But you were in other battles too. You were in several.
we were in,
Did you sink any ships?
Did you sink any ships?
Did the
No.
USS Chester sink
no,
any ships?
the Chester, we got hit, we got
Yeah.
hit twice, but,
Well, they knew they had the commander on that ship, so
yeah,
Yeah.
it was a flagship.
yeah, it was a flagship. But,
So they were trying probably to.
this thing is cranking away, but.
No, that's okay. Hey, it's pointed at your lovely faces. Don't worry about it. The pauses seem long when you're sitting there, but when you're watching it, it's not that long. So don't worry about it. So when you say you were the flagship, was this of the whole U.S. fleet, or was this of your
No.
company? This was your.
We were 11 ships.
I see.
They live in
11
the
ships.
In the
We had
company.
2 battle
Yeah.
wagons.
The sister ship of the USS Chester, that wasn't like a famous battle, wasn't it?
The sister ship,
Of the
Yeah.
USS Chester.
He was saying, was that in a famous battle?
Thought it was.
He thought you told him something about that one time.
yeah, the Helena,
It got sunk, I think, didn't it?
yeah, yes, one of the ships, a heavy cruiser, was sunk.
That's the one where you knew everybody on the ship. And
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's the bad one that he doesn't
So the
like.
Japanese were pretty powerful. They must have had, they were a formidable enemy then, weren't they?
yes, they were. Yes, they were.
Yeah.
Yes.
When did you sense that the war was going our way? I mean, you know, when did you sense that hey, we're going to win? You know, at what point was that? Do you remember having that kind of feeling?
Yes, but it was
More toward the end?
more toward the end,
Yeah.
because once we weren't prepared for war. See, the
Ah.
Japanese were. They had a plan.
Yeah.
They had planned.
Well, sure, they bombed Pearl Harbor and took everybody by surprise.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
That was part of their plan,
Yeah.
but it didn't go quite the way they wanted
They
it
wanted
to,
it to.
because
Right.
it wasn't as easy.
Yeah.
They thought that they could get away with it,
Yeah.
but it didn't work out that way.
No.
But we did lose a lot of ships out there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, is there any consolation in the fact that you did just as much damage to their fleet as they did to yours? I mean, do you guys feel that for every ship they sunk of yours, you sank one of theirs? Did you feel like it was pretty even?
Well, it got pretty even all of a sudden, because when we were attacked, the Japs didn't realize how fast we could get prepared for a war,
Yeah,
and it took us a lot less time than they thought.
than they thought.
So
Now, you said at one time you guys rescued President Bush? How did I kind of, what story was that? You guys, President Bush was out there in the war floating around and you guys picked him up, huh?
yeah,
What battle was that?
yeah, it was
I didn't know that.
yeah. I'm trying to think where it was now.
Do you remember what ship he was on?
Well, he was a Navy.
He was
He
a
was an
Oh, he was an aviator, so his plane went down
His
Yeah.
plane went down and we picked him up.
and you guys picked him up.
out of the drink.
So you met President Bush?
Yeah. He wasn't president.
Yeah, right.
He was
Yeah.
a little. He was a flunky.
Yeah. But you remembered, I mean, after all these years, when he kind of went into political office, you recognized him, you remembered the name and everything.
Oh, sure. He
I
Yeah.
remembered the name. Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's neat. Yeah,
Yeah.
a little local color. Yeah. So, now when you worked at Sears, you were working. Were you working in appliances when you met Mud? Were you working in the appliance department at Sears?
when I first, of course, I knew him for years before we even got together, because I'd see him once or twice a year just to say.
But I mean,
hello.
when you guys started going, when you started going together, like when you took her to that first date on Sunset Beach.
Well, then he was still in the service. See.
Oh, you were still in the service.
Sure,
That's
I
right.
told you
Oh,
he was
yeah,
stationed
yeah.
down here. He was
I
like-
lost track there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were still in the service when. Yeah, when you went to Sunset.
After you guys are married, did you move here kind of sooner?
No, we
Steel
what
Street.
we did when we got married, Matthew. It was hard to
I gotta go
find an
back.
apartment or a house. It was during the war. They weren't building any new ones because they didn't have anything to build. Building material. You couldn't even get nails because Danny and I, Al and I were looking for a place to live and we couldn't find a place. And Al said, "Well, we'll build a place." And we spotted this place down here that you can see. It's called Petridge Point, where they have those beautiful homes down there. See those trees, and you see the roof of one, see the roof of two of them? See? Anyway, you can look at it later. But I'll tell you.
See where those 3 boats are
Yes.
out there? Petridge Point, side along the beach where that clump of trees is.
But I'll tell you, Matthew, what happened. We were looking for a place to build a house, and that was our favorite place. And there were no nice homes there then. There was just 1 or 2 little homes. And Daddy said, I'd love to, because he liked the water, you know. He had this place at the beach where he took me on the first date. And we would have bought it, but we didn't have enough money to buy it. We didn't have any money. And it was very cheap in those days if we'd had any money. Is this going on here? But, so then what we did, we managed to get an apartment, which was not where we desired to be or kind of apartment we wanted, but we were thrilled to death. Somebody had moved out and they said we could have it, but they weren't going to clean it up because, you know, people were just taking it, just glad to find a place to live. So we had to go in there, and Daddy painted it all up and all, and we lived there for, what, about a year?
About a year.
And then in the meantime, we bought this old home up on Steel Street because we got it for $4,000.
That's
And
nothing today.
That's nothing today. And but then he tore down walls and we redid the whole thing. It was almost like building a new house, because you know when you entered there was the sitting room and the living room in those houses. He tore down walls and he added a couple rooms, and we made a nice place of it. In fact, we made it a duplex. And then for an income, we rented the upstairs. See, we had Dr. Blau moved in there. He was still in school, but he became a very good friend. He was a foot doctor, and he and his wife moved in there, and we lived there for a number of years. How many years did we live there? Well, we've been here 41 years, and we've been married 50, so we were there about 7 or 8 years, I guess.
I remember I was in the 3rd grade when
You were
we
in the
moved
3rd
here.
grade,
I
yeah.
was in the 3rd grade. It was
And,
November 1955
Yeah,
when we moved here.
yeah, because you were born when we were up on Steel.
Yeah, I remember
But that
Steel
old
Street
house,
when I
we
was
were
little.
so glad to get that too, but I was telling Matthew we paid $4,000 for that.
Oh man!
But we had
Woo.
we spent money fixing
Money
it, but
fixing it,
not
yeah.
that much either, because, you know, but we couldn't build a new home. We were going to get this place at Petridge Point,
Yeah.
because you couldn't get nails. You can't build a house without nails.
Oh, isn't that something?
Well, during the war, you couldn't get anything. They weren't
Oh,
putting
yeah.
out washing machines or nothing.
Oh.
Because I know when I left the store, when I quit, they wanted to do something nice for me, you know. And so they had one washing machine on display to show what the
Oh.
future would bring when they were available.
Oh.
And it wasn't for sale. It was
Huh.
just on display because they weren't building anything during the war because everything
Yeah.
was built for
Yeah.
for war supplies. And I remember they had a big party for me, the whole store, and they gave me a beautiful robe and all. And then they presented me with this washing machine. It was like
Oh.
getting gold because
Gee.
you couldn't buy one for lover money.
Oh.
This was what they were going to build in
Yeah.
the future. And the manager decided that I should have it.
Oh, that's neat.
So they gave it to me as a gift. And we were delighted. We didn't even know where to put it then. We were my mother's.
So you got one of the first washing machines.
Yeah, well, they had been making them
yeah.
before.
They had been making it
But
before the war.
See,
but-
they stopped. Well, like I say, they weren't even making nails.
yeah, they needed the metal for the war effort to make
They needed all
planes
the
and
metals.
ammunition
Basically,
and all that.
when the war started, it put a lot of things on hold.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
they
exactly
did.
it. They put things
Right.
on hold, and they were on hold for a long time.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I remember you didn't get your first dryer for a while because you used to have a clothesline in the utility room on Steel Street. You used to
Yeah.
hang everything over the clothesline.
See, Al put in that utility room, that big room. He
Yeah.
put a big freezer in there. Then he built on your bedroom
Huh.
because that wasn't there. Because you see, that house had an upstairs,
That's right.
and we made a duplex of it.
That's right.
So there was only one bedroom downstairs because we made a duplex of the one up above. So Daddy's worked hard all his life. He just couldn't sit and do nothing. When we bought that old house, I looked at it and I thought, do we want this? Al
Fixer upper,
Al
huh?
said, wait till I'm through with it. Just
Yeah.
wait till I'm through with it. He said, it's not going to look like this at all.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't because the apartment upstairs was beautiful.
Yeah, it was nice. I remember.
And we had all that nice furniture we got from this friend of ours who was in Seattle. They were moving and they gave it to us for practically nothing. So we had it
Oh.
looking nice.
Yeah.
Then he put in that stairway on the side.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I don't know of anyone who's ever worked as hard as Al all his life.
Well, and then you had a talent for building. I mean, everything you build is to last.
Well, then
Everything
he
you
built the
build is-
beach place when we bought that lot.
Oh yeah.
Because his original place he sold when he went into service.
Yeah.
Because his mother didn't want to take care of it. So at that time we sold it to the assistant manager of the Winthrop Hotel, which was the hotel in Tacoma, the nicest place. And,
But you guys had a little place when he started dating you.
yeah,
You
he
had a little place at the other end.
a little tiny place.
Yeah.
That's when he was building fireplaces, and he had one in that little tiny place.
Oh, that's
and he did
neat.
it.
Yeah.
He went to the book and got a library, and he wanted to build a fireplace, and he built the best fireplace you ever saw. And same
That's
in
pretty
our
cool.
cottage over there. But
Yeah.
then he, I
Then,
forgot where I was.
oh, you said that then he bought the place at Sunset Beach at the other end where we spent
Just
our
a lot.
summers.
And then he only had Sundays off, one day a week, and we were out there every Sunday. And you were little, we'd put you there to sleep under the tree, and I'd
Yeah.
sit there with you in the sand. And Daddy would be working in that cottage,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that was a cute little place.
Oh yeah. Oh, that was a wonderful place. Yeah.
Now, when did you guys move here?
41 years ago.
Yeah, November 1955. I remember because I was in the 3rd grade.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember in November. I remember the day we moved in. There was
It
no
was snowing.
heat. No heat. And I thought, and you guys were getting all nostalgic. Well, I remember when I was little, it was that way. We'd have to get up and stoke the fire. I thought it was the pits. I was used to central heating. I said, man, this
We had a
stinks. Yeah, but my bedroom was at the other end. I remember getting up that first day of school and it was like 30 degrees. I thought, the new house, this stinks.
And then we didn't have much furniture because we had ordered our Davenport. and
Did you
everything.
guys have this house built?
Yes.
Yeah, we had it built.
Yeah.
When we decided that we were ready for a new house, I said to Daddy, I don't want it if you're going to have anything to do with it. You've done too much of this.
Yeah.
Because, he could have built a new house with what he did up at the other one.
Yeah.
And he said, no, we'll have this one built. So, Daddy, whatever he got into worked well. He
Oh,
just
yeah.
had that knack.
Yeah.
And I remember we were looking for a lot, and we only had so much money, we couldn't go way out. And we couldn't find a lot that we could afford with the water view.
Yeah.
So this lot was part of
Barslack.
the Barslack's house.
Yeah.
And that house was for sale. It was built by a lumber baron years ago. They used to build
Yeah.
these big homes with a lot of fireplaces. And this was their backyard. They had a pool and fish and everything and little trees and it was all, it was a pretty sight.
Landscape.
And
Yeah.
else, it was all beautifully landscaped, and Daddy looked at it and he said, that house is for sale. He said, and Al Allard is one of the salesmen. He said, I'm going to call up and tell them that if anyone wants that house and wants to sell this back lot, we'll buy it. So you called Al Allard, and the Barslacks were interested, but they didn't have much money then. No one did,
Yeah. Yeah.
And they wanted that house. So when we approached him, Al Allard approached him and said, well, I have someone who would like to buy this as a building site. And we paid $2,500. You want to take it off the hook? Or just tell him that we're busy, I'll call him back.
Well, turn
Okay.
it second. Okay, now.
So when the Barslags wanted that house, but it was kind of
Yeah.
going to be a drain on them. They didn't quite have the money to
Yeah.
right? So when they found out someone wanted all this property, which they didn't need, they've got a lot of property as it is, they were thrilled.
Yeah.
And we only paid $2,500 for this lot.
Yeah.
And today it would be worth about $75,000
Gee.
at least, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Maybe $100,000. Because Waterview property is very expensive.
Yeah.
And when we got it for $2,500, but then in those days that was the reasonable price.
Sure.
And
Sure.
so
Can't
we
even
were.
buy a new
Huh?
car for $2,000.
And this was funny because everybody in the neighborhood, they were all different neighbors. They were all older people. Because I remember we were the young people. You were the little young girl. And
Yeah.
we had all these older people living around here.
Yeah, Miss Whitney lived across the street, and I think, didn't she come over in a covered wagon or something? I mean, she was about in her 80s when we moved in.
She was a very prim and proper ex-school teacher. And her
Yeah.
brother, who lived with her, was a school principal for years. And when she came to call on us, when we moved here, she came to the door with her gloves and her hat
Oh,
and
wow.
dropped her card on the
Oh,
table.
you're kidding! Real old fashioned. Oh, that's funny.
But they were nice neighbors,
Sure.
but not for you because you said nobody to play with. And
Yeah.
you had friends across over on Prospect Hill who went to school with you.
Yeah, but well, I had Ralph and Hank, which was good because
Yeah.
Ralph accepted me, which was really nice because I played with all the boys.
I know it. There was a bunch of boys.
Boys,
They belonged to a club. They called it boys who lived. A doctor who lived down here. His son.
Yeah.
And when they found out we had that nice unfinished basement, boy, they said they thought that was pretty neat.
Yeah.
And they thought, gee, that'd be a nice meeting place.
Yeah.
Except you to get in the club too.
Also, to use Daddy's tools. Ralph, when he saw the Daddy's tool area, says, "Wow, look at all these neat tools." And he was borrowing them. You know, Daddy would go down and say, "Well, where's this? Where's that?" "Oh, Ralph's got it."
And then I remember once you got tired of it, you said, just boys. I have to play with boys all the time here.
Well, then I got Tony down the
Yeah,
bottom
then
of the
you
hill.
got
Then I
Tony.
started playing with
And
Tony.
then you had this doctor's, they had the two daughters across here. Not very
Oh yeah, Dr. Bonica. Yeah, that wasn't until
no,
Carly.
not Bonica, the other one.
Oh, Dilly, Evelyn
Dr.
Dilly.
Dilly.
When,
Yeah.
when you had this house built, did you have it built so that part of the downstairs you could rent out as like a...
Yeah. Yeah, we figured, see, that's another smart thing Daddy did. He thought, well, we'll have a little income.
Yeah,
Because right now, it would be pretty hard for us
yeah.
to have a house like this without that income. Because, see, our taxes are so high.
Oh yeah.
And that pays for the taxes.
But you guys didn't. You always had that in mind, but you didn't actually finish the apartment until I was in high school because we had that big unfinished basement,
Yeah.
and me and my friends used to play down there. It was wonderful. We had that whole big area. And you guys actually didn't make an apartment out of it until I was about 15 or 16.
We didn't finish it off, no.
Yeah, I was about, I was in high school when you guys finished it off.
And the boys were tickled to death to have their meetings there, so they accepted you. You were the only
Yeah.
girl in the group.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
they thought, well, you're okay. And the boys got so they liked you because
Yeah.
you used to like to go over and play with their train. They had a big
Oh
train.
yeah, well especially Ralph.
But
Ralph
you-
was real nice. Hank wouldn't have. Hank kind of went along with his brother, but Ralph was the one. And I'll never forget because some of the boys thought it was kind of weird that a girl was in their club. And I remember the first meeting was at Ralph's house, and somebody took him aside and said, "Is she in the club too?" And Ralph said, "Yeah, she is." And the kid said, "Why?" And Ralph says, "Because I said so." And that was it. Good old Ralph. He was my buddy.
But I remember,
Case
one
closed, you
time-
know.
I know one time when you were really infuriated because the boys had invited you over to play with their train, or Ralph did.
Yeah.
And when you went to the door, their sister Alice, who was older, said, "Ralph, your girlfriend's here." And none of you wanted to be girlfriends and boyfriends in those days. And you came home and you were so mad.
Oh yeah, Alice
You were-
was always. Well, we were always mad. I was always mad at Alice because she was always making digs at her brothers. You know.
But when she said, "Your girlfriend's here,"
Yeah.
you got upset.
Well, I was upset because Ralph was upset because I was afraid they wouldn't accept me if they thought any, girlfriend and boyfriend. See, we were too young for that, so they didn't want me as a girlfriend. They wanted me to be one of the guys.
Yeah.
So see, Alice was just trying to tease us a little
I
bit.
know. She tightened that screw once in a
Yeah,
while.
right. Well, we got even. One time, she had her boyfriend over, and the boys, they were in band. Hank was taking trombone, Ralph was taking baritone, and I had my accordion. So we decided we were all going to get together down in the basement when Alice had her boyfriend over and make a lot of racket with our musical instruments. So give him a little serenade. So we'd find ways to get even, you know.
Well, anyway.
Well, maybe we better wind this up. We can maybe continue this another time. But I think we
I'll
got a
never
wealth
forget,
of
though,
information.
I know. I remember, just one more thing.